Hi, and welcome to a review of anything. I guess we're still going to call these that. We saw Annihilation, directed by who? You got the IMDb pulled up, so I'm going to have you. We're unprofessional, I'm sorry.
Alex Garland.
Alex Garland. Annihilation, directed by Alex Garland. Annihilation's not really a monster movie, but we're going to review it because it seemed interesting. Well, I wasn't sure if we were going to review it before we saw it. I was like, hey, maybe we can do this. And then after seeing it, I'm like, I kind of want to do that. So I'm going to try and make this relatively short compared to our 50-minute long reviews. But Annihilation is about a girl played by Natalie Portman who has lost someone special to her in her life, and she's, through a sort of odd series of events, recruited, in a sense, into joining a military task force that is being sent into something called the Shimmer, which is this sort of odd rainbow magnetic field that's on the outskirts of a research center. And no one's come back out who's been sent in, whether it's humans or drones or whatever. And yeah, that's about all the non-spoilery stuff to say about the plot. Okay, so quick first impressions. We talked about this just at the theater a little bit. I mean, at least mine. So I'd seen like one of the trailers like twice, maybe.
I hadn't seen much of the movie either.
Before going in, like I was like interested. And then Taylour just texted me. He's like, "Hey, do you want to go see this?" I was like, "Yeah, okay."
Going into great detail.
Yeah, but so the first half of this movie, I was like super intrigued. The first like 15 minutes or so.
The first 15 minutes kind of set up just the mystery. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I guess we should say we're in the spoilers section now. Spoilers.
Yeah, okay. Recommendation real quick. Go see it, I think.
Yeah, I would say it's you're not going to see much like it.
Yeah.
It's a good movie.
Mm-hmm.
I liked it a lot.
Yeah. So,
first 15 minutes kind of set up the connection that Natalie Portman has with her husband. Her husband is played by Oscar Isaac. He works for the military.
They both worked for the military.
Yeah, they both were in the army. She dropped out to teach biology. Mm-hmm. And he stayed, and he was getting sent to
somewhere,
places that he couldn't really tell her.
Mm-hmm. And
so she has to deal with the fact that she may have lost her husband. And so, she's grieving, and there's a scene where she's like invited by a coworker to come to a barbecue, and she, declines the offer so that she can stay home and kind of grieve. And one night as she's painting her bedroom, her husband shows up.
He's back, and she like just goes up and hugs him. I mean, like it takes a second for you to realize that this is her husband.
Yeah.
Like it sort of leaves you like just like, whoa.
Initially, I thought it was just like her picturing him just like walking home.
I thought it was that, or I thought it was some relative until they started kissing, and I was like, wait, who is this guy? And then it's made pretty apparent.
She asks him a lot of questions, like, where were you? What happened to you? All of his responses are, I don't know. And he doesn't even know how he got back to the house. And he starts,
coughing up blood, basically.
Yeah, and essentially with that leads her and him both being led to, quote, Area X, where...
This is like where the movie is starting to go like, we're gonna go.
The movie kind of turns into
a different movie.
Essentially, this movie is based. I don't know if it's based on the entire trilogy.
I think you just read it was based on like the first part.
It's based on the first book.
The first
of a trilogy.
Of a trilogy, apparently, which I had totally forgotten going into the movie.
It the movie turns into a rescue mission because Oscar Isaac is recovering, and this Area X is a site where the Shimmer, essentially, it's just a big dome that has been expanding from the epicenter of a
lighthouse.
A lighthouse.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we should necessarily just recap the entire movie.
Yeah, I was gonna say I was just
gonna leave it there.
Quickly.
And it's just like she,
Yeah,
she's
if
assigned.
you want super specific spoilers,
Yeah,
then go see the movie because I think that's what you should do.
probably.
Yeah, I mean unless you don't have money or don't care.
Like the only parts of this that I really want to talk about is like the last 10 minutes.
Yeah. So yeah, just like quickly go through our thoughts on like part of the movie. So the first 15 minutes sets up like the intrigue.
Mm-hmm.
You're sort of like okay, like I'm interested. And
the middle part is exploring what's inside the Shimmer.
Like it felt like God, what movie did it feel like? Well, it felt like a lot of movies really. Yeah. Basically, from the moment they step into the Shimmer, the movie changes kind of for the worse. Tonally, yeah, and like in sort of the spectacle of the movie changes on like what it's trying to focus on, and it gets boring for I would say a good solid 40-45 minutes or so.
For you maybe I wasn't necessarily bored. I was still entertained.
I mean, yeah, I guess bored in the sense that I thought this movie was about to just start going downhill fast, and I was going to crash and burn when it had a interesting premise.
During the middle part, it was, for me at least, it was still very entertaining. It just felt like it was a bit of a clash of two tones for one project. Like, there's a part in it that is kind of gory, and part of me wanted, to see more of a type of grindhouse kind of movie, but that wouldn't really work with the overall feeling of it.
Yeah, like given the rest of the movie, it's just odd how this 45 minute section in the middle of the movie, not even the middle, like the second act. Yeah, the entire second act pretty much is just vastly different, and it started to get a little on the nose and like hitting you over the head with its like metaphors and stuff.
Yeah.
Because the Shimmer is basically this entire kind of allegory, I guess, for cancer. Because in the very first scene of the movie, Natalie Portman's like giving her lecture on cells or whatever. She's like a cell researcher at her university, and she's talking about cancer cells. And you're like, oh, like everything originated from one cell, and it like split up and created everything in the universe. And
see, that's where I want to get to talking about this movie, because you interpret it as cancer. I kind of interpret...
Well, yeah, I interpreted something different later.
Okay,
yeah, like this 45-minute section basically hammers in the cancer allegory, essentially.
Yeah. Like,
you have a scene where there's these... Well, okay, so all the wildlife, flora and fauna in the Shimmer...
And biological, like animals and stuff like that.
Pretty much anything biological is mutated in some way. Mm-hmm. So, like, the plants have, like... There are these vines, and there's multicolored flowers growing on them.
Yeah, if it grows on the same thing, instead of growing each as the... If they grow on the same vine, it's different species on the same place.
Yeah, and there's this, like, alligator they come across that has, like, razor teeth like a shark or something. And then there's, like, a wolf bear thing, which, well, I mean, we'll get to that in a second, but... Yeah, and then there's a scene where Natalie Portman comes across the deer, and this is where I was kind of like, wow, that's kind of like hitting it over the head. I mean, maybe not hitting it over the head, but it was like, okay, like that's a little obvious. It's just the scene with like one deer grazing in the grass, and then out from behind it comes like a second identical deer. You're like okay, I see what you're trying to do, movie.
Well, what you may have focused on that. What made me focus was the deer had flowers in its antlers.
Oh, was it flowers? I didn't like pay attention to that. I was just like...
Everything was kind of becoming one and mixing together.
Yeah, and that's something when they sort of get to this community that was evacuated as the Shimmer was approaching. There's all these flower statues, essentially. These flowers that look like people.
Structures that have grown to be like the silhouettes of people.
Mm-hmm. Which I was worried for a second that they were gonna use that as like their next the danger they come across or whatever.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh my god, the flower people are alive or something, or they were once people too.
It felt like they were, quickly trying to end the second act.
Yeah, which it
was an okay ending for
I
that.
appreciate. I feel like the second act might have been. I don't want to like forgive it necessarily for that, but I feel like it might have been a studio thing. Like, oh, you got to have some like
action,
some action and some monster stuff in there.
I was still okay with the action.
Yeah, it wasn't bad.
It wasn't. When I say tonally different, it was tonally different, but it wasn't like.
It felt like a different genre.
It wasn't aggravating. It was still a clash of tones, but it was a blend more than a clash.
Yeah, like I guess for me during the second act, as my, I guess like expectations or like feelings for this movie were dropping, I was just kind of like, oh, this is the direction we're going. Like, oh well, I mean it's like still okay, but I was disappointed. But
the third act.
Yeah, the third act is where we change.
The story leads to the lighthouse where the epicenter of the shimmer came from, and inside of the lighthouse is like a bunch of vines, and
there's a charred dead body.
There's a charred dead body, and there's a hole in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a camera pointing at the charred dead body, and I'm not going to get into specifics, but Natalie Portman kind of learns what is maybe happening.
This is like, like right before this scene going into it is when it like clicked for me. All of a sudden, I'm like, okay, I get what this movie's going for. Like, I'm back into this. It
shows kind of what the limitations and
it kind of basically explains what the shimmer's doing. Like short and simple. The video shows. Okay, never mind. We're not going to tell you exactly what she sees on the video camera.
Yeah, it kind of shows human nature, I feel, for me, as in sometimes the limitations that humans think that they can have.
Perhaps. Yeah, I think it's kind of the limitation of humans. Like, what I necessarily think it is, like, comes later on, after Natalie Portman, like, goes into this hole in the lighthouse and she basically figures out what's going on, and it's made a little more clear to the audience at first what
I guess we should definitely put like a disclaimer in the fact that this is definitely like an art house movie, kind of. It's not. I wouldn't say art house. I would say it's artsy.
Yeah, 'cause I wouldn't say this is something like a ghost story where you can like get super deep with analysis in it and stuff. Like this one you can analyze, but it's not like something like people are going to be theorizing about. People will be theorizing about it. It's
vague, and it's meant to be vague. It's an artsy movie.
Yeah, it's left vague enough where you do think about it, but once you do think about it, you're like, okay, that's what's going on.
Yeah.
But that is enough to intrigue you, I suppose, which I did appreciate about the movie when I came out of it. Like, after the credits started rolling or whatever, like you were like, okay, what did you think? And I was like, I just sort of sat there for a minute because I'm like, I don't really know what to think. Then I was like I thought it over for a second. I'm like, yeah, like, that was pretty good.
Ironically, he didn't know. Kind of like Oscar Isaac.
Yeah, Oscar Isaac.
And Natalie Portman.
Yeah.
Anyway, so she goes down this hole where she discovers... Not this?
Another disclaimer. Mega spoilers.
Okay, yeah.
Because if we're gonna talk about this part, then
because I feel like this is where all of the interpretation comes from.
Yeah. So if you have any interest at all in seeing the movie,
don't watch beyond this.
Yeah, don't watch beyond this. I think it's best saved for the theater, unless you really don't care.
Yeah.
Or you've already seen the movie. I would just stop right here. Like, I recommend it. I think you do.
It's a good movie. Go watch it. Yeah. Go spend money on it.
Yeah, I think it's. I haven't seen Black Panther, but it's probably the best movie of 2018 so far.
Oh my god, I love it so much. I love it, I love it. I can't say that I hate it. I love it.
Yeah. It's my favorite. It's the best movie of the year, guys.
No one's pointing a gun at me saying that if I say I don't like it, I'll be bad.
All right. Mega spoilers.
Where are you? Oh, okay.
I was holding it down.
So the teammate kind of.
Okay, let's go back to the videotape real quick.
Yeah.
I just want to cover that. So in the videotape, we see Natalie Portman's husband, Oscar Isaac. He spews some mumbo jumbo. I don't remember exactly what he said. But
He was saying, I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know what to believe.
Right. Yeah,
am I you? Is like the last words
he's talking in a country accent. At this point in the movie, you've never heard him talk in a country accent, even in the flashbacks that there are spread throughout the movie. So Oscar Isaac takes a phosphorus grenade and, blows himself up. It just really
He lights himself on fire.
Yeah, it burns him to a crisp, basically. And then from behind the camera, we see another Oscar Isaac, one who looks a little less unkempt, basically. He's more cleanly shaven, he has a nicer haircut or whatever. And you can tell that that's the Oscar Isaac that we saw in the beginning of the movie, who came out of the shimmer.
Yeah, he resembles the one that shows up while Natalie Portman's painting.
Mm-hmm. Which, it didn't occur to me at first, but when he comes back, this dude who's supposedly been away for like a year and nobody knew where he was, but Natalie Portman, he's pretty well kept, which I didn't even realize at first, but yeah. So it's made at that point you start to realizing that the shimmer is sort of going back to the beginning of the movie when Natalie Portman is talking about how one cell originate. Well, that's more for Inside the Lighthouse. So Natalie Portman goes. I'm
leaving it up to you because I would be stumbling more on my words.
Yeah. Okay. So Natalie Portman goes in the lighthouse. Her last team member's there, and she says like it's inside me, and it's not like us, and its goal is annihilation. We're just roll credits, and then she just starts spewing what basically looks like the shimmer out of her.
She kind of just becomes light and vomits light and becomes light.
She's these particles floating all in the air, and they come together into this weird, trippy,
really cool visualization.
It was a really cool visual.
It's almost like a portal or it's a factory.
Yeah, it's sort of like those endless staircase kind of things where it just keeps looping in itself.
It produces essentially
a being.
Essentially an alien, a being. And Natalie Portman attacks it, and
she shoots it, and the bullets fly through it, and they just nothing happens.
Yeah.
So she gets out of there.
She's falling out of the hole.
And then the thing is up there waiting for her, and then we find out it's mirroring her every movement, but it also doesn't outright attack her. She's the one who attacks it. And eventually, after a scuffle a couple times, they get knocked down a couple times, and even when Natalie Portman herself gets knocked down, the being just sort of goes to lay down in the same position, essentially.
It's learning, I feel.
Yeah.
Is the way that I interpret it.
So I interpreted this as back to the beginning of the movie, like I was saying before, when Natalie Portman's talking about how one cell originates everything. It becomes everything. So
the shimmer is everything.
Yeah, it's essentially because a new universe sort of layered on top.
One thing that we forgot to mention is that whenever people are exposed to the shimmer, they start getting the cells from the shimmer inside themselves, and it's represented whenever Natalie Portman sicks herself in the arm, looks at her blood through a microscope, and it's
it splits apart.
Yeah, like
a cancer cell, essentially, which is that's around the time that I was oh, okay, this is a whole cancer thing. But then the very end of the movie, it's sort of 180s, and it's more so just new life, a totally kind of new start, essentially. The shimmer is just using the normal world as a base layer, I suppose. So it's mutating everything, and it learns. It tries to be Natalie Portman.
Before I get right into what I want to finish what happens in the movie, kind of.
Yeah, we should probably wrap this up.
So she realizes that it's mimicking her, and they start. Now they're moving slower and kind of getting comfortable, and she reaches for an incendiary grenade, and they both hold it, and she pulls the pin, and they're staring at each other, and then she runs off while the thing holds the grenade and lights on fire.
Yeah, right after it transforms into Natalie Portman's likeness, and it's just standing there what the fuck, and
And so whenever that happens, it starts lighting the lighthouse on fire.
It lights the little area under the lighthouse on
Mhm.
fire. It basically destroys the shimmer.
And all of the things that the shimmer created essentially burn and become ash.
Mhm.
And so Natalie Portman leaves. She gets taken back to Area X where she's interviewed.
And you see this interview or like interrogation or whatever throughout the entire movie.
Yeah.
Which I was like kind of unsure of at first. I mean, I felt like it relieved a little bit of the tension in the movie. You're like, okay, Natalie Portman gets out alive. But the rest of the movie doesn't actually play up the tension factor. Like, even when she goes off alone, it doesn't like try to startle you with jump scares. Like, there's none of that in this movie, which I appreciated.
It's because the director is really artsy. I like his stuff.
Yeah.
Of the two stuff that I've seen.
I was gonna say.
I say I like his stuff, but I've only seen one other, movie that he's made. Anyway, so she is interviewed, and she goes to see her husband.
Who's like, he's all better now.
Yeah.
After the shimmer's been destroyed.
Yeah, and so she, walks over to him. She's like,
Are you Kane?
And he says, I don't know.
He says, are you Lena? And she just sort of looks at him.
Yeah, and one thing that that we also forgot to mention is that whenever she asks, how he got there, he says to her, this was back at the house, he says to her, I just found myself at the doorway and I saw you and I recognized you. So he knows that, at least he got either memories or impressions from the past Oscar Isaac that, Lena is an important person to him, if not the story of the, movie.
Yeah,
and so
they hug, and then we see both of their eyes, and there's a shimmer in their eyes, basically, which, I mean, obviously with Oscar Isaac, you're led to believe that he's the shimmer recreation that it made, essentially, that you saw in the camera video.
With her, it's that there's still cells of it or traces of it in her.
Yeah, I think you could say it's that, or maybe, I mean, I don't know how you could interpret that. That she was the other shimmer.
I don't think that's the case.
I was trying to think how they could play that in, but I mean, you could pretty clearly see it burn. Like Natalie Portman's skin burns off of the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, unless the cells.
It's a metaphor.
Yeah, we're not going to deeply.
Yeah, I think it's actually Natalie Portman, and she just has traces. That's me.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyways,
so, that's
interpretations of the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much it. It's a good movie.
What do you think is the message of the movie? That's like the last thing I want to get into, because I feel like the way I saw it has a big deal the way that I, view the movie and the way I enjoy the movie.
See, it's weird because what I thought it was going to be changed a couple times throughout the movie. And so, I mean, now I'm kind of sitting here, I'm like, I mean, I'm not like entirely sure. I mean, it could probably go a couple different ways. I don't think there's necessarily like a message behind it or something, but I think it's just like this theme of just life.
I'll give an answer.
Like biology.
I interpret it as life and death are the same thing in this sense.
Okay. Is
that whenever she says, it's here to annihilate, it's not necessarily there to annihilate. It's bringing new life.
It's yeah. Like this is what I was thinking. Like just from a biological standpoint, it's just it doesn't have a goal. It's just creating.
I feel like that is the goal. It is to create life.
It's just creating life. Like
that life does happen to become, a skinned bear that eats people, but whatever.
I mean, life finds a way.
Yeah, I feel that with the entire movie, at least the way that I interpret it, is that, people view death as the end, but, I guess life can go on beyond death, and people...
It's sort of like that line from The Last Jedi when there's the Force scene or whatever, Rey's seeing the Force or whatever, and she's like, there's life and death that feeds new life.
Yeah.
It's, like, I mean, I kind of took it as like it's just life exists. Maybe it doesn't need a reason to. Maybe it doesn't like have a purpose for existing.
Anyways,
That's life. It's a good movie.
Go watch it. Bye.
You should go watch it.
Bye.
Bye.